Okay, we've got some news from the Shinra Archaeology Department over on X. A lot of y'all may be up to date with this now, but I'm just now looking at it. Now, I'm not on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I'm not really on it like that, so I'm not even going to bother plugging my page. But yeah, we've got some interviews, some part 3 details. I'm just going to go through those real quick, share my thoughts. Feel free to chime in the comment section. Just take a look at some stuff that's worth talking about here. 7 Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi elaborated on his recent comments about Part 3 that would feel more concise, explaining that he intends to make the third game better paced rather than condensing its content. That's good. Not sure what he means by better paced, because when I played through Rebirth, my main goal was to do everything. Not because everything was fun, but because when it comes to FF7, I'm a completionist. I want to complete everything in this thing. Of course, I platinumed it. I plan on playing again when Part 3 is right around the corner, along with the remake and maybe Crisis Core Reunion. Let's see. Hamaguchi also elaborated on his recent comments that, yeah. It's about making sure the pacing feels right. It's not about cutting out content. Great. It's making sure that it feels right. The speed that the story progresses at feels right. And it's fairly quick and feels like you can get through at a reasonable pace. I think all of that hinges on whether or not you do the side content. A lot of people just want to blast through the story because they don't want to feel, they don't want spoilers and whatnot. So they just go through the story and then they do the side content on subsequent playthroughs, which is fine. But me, like I just said, I want to do everything so I don't have to replay like 3 or 4 times to platinum the game, because Rebirth was a bitch to platinum. If you platinum the game, you know that this game was a total bitch. That depends on how you approach the game. I don't think it's anything that the devs did wrong. Obviously, you're not talking about Part 3 much at the moment, but you were quoted in the press recently at stating that the third game would be more concise compared to Rebirth. Could you elaborate on that? That's actually something I wanted to speak about today, so I'm glad that you asked that. Just to explain, the original question, I was asked, they said that there are some people who played Rebirth, the second game in the series, and they felt that because we've added in new story content, which wasn't in the original FF7, to them it felt like the story was being stretched out. So they asked whether we were considering doing anything related to that in the third game. The only reason why they expanded on that is because the original game felt condensed. If you play the original game now, after you played Remake and Rebirth, which I wouldn't advise, you'll notice that the original game just it's fast. It's much faster because there's not a lot of detail and world building going on. There's some character development, but as far as world building goes, it lacks severely. That's why the Remake trilogy is so much more superior than the original game. In terms of the results of FF7 Rebirth and the ultimate experience that it delivered to players, that's actually something that I'm very confident. I mean, I don't want to blow my own trumpet too much, but the way I work as a director, I don't think there are that many other directors out there who, to the level that I do this, are playing through the games that I'm directing. Sitting there and going through them and playing them again and again and again, just to see if the gameplay experience and the balance feels right. I can only speak to that personally, and it's fine. It's better than fine. I don't see anything wrong with it per se. It just depends on how you approach it. This is okay. I'm very confident in Part 3. Porting to Xbox and Switch 2. That's good. I'm glad that y'all are finally getting this game. Because since 1997, all the new mainline Final Fantasies were exclusive to PlayStation. And now they're finally bringing the Remake trilogy to y'all. And y'all can finally experience this without having to buy a new console. Yeah, so that's just some Switch 2 stuff. I don't plan on ever buying a Switch 2, especially for a game that I already platinumed. I don't see the reason in spending the money. For the same reason why I didn't get a PlayStation Pro. Like, why would I spend $700 on a Pro on only one game I plan on getting, and it's already platinumed? See, he feels that the pacing, the content, and the balance in Rebirth is exactly as he wanted it. He personally doesn't feel it's been stretched out. It doesn't feel unnecessarily long. To him, he thinks he got that right, and that people a lot would agree with him. I would agree with that. I put a lot of effort into that. There can't be that many other directors who put that much emphasis on that. I feel that the pacing, the content, and the balance in Rebirth is exactly as I wanted it. I personally don't feel it's been stretched out. It doesn't feel unnecessarily long. To me, I think I got that right, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. Yes, I read that, but yeah, I do agree with that. It goes back to a previous video where I said I want to experience the game as they planned. I want to experience their vision and not their vision according to what other people want. That's not what art is. But obviously, I understand that there are many people who would see it like that and maybe feel differently. That's fine. I see the people who express those opinions, and that's definitely worth taking on board that some people feel that. But you have to take in like certain elements of people's opinions. Don't let their opinions affect your art. I don't know how many times I have to say that. However, for the third game, in terms of what I said about that and the way I'm looking at that, it's about improving the pacing and making sure that to achieve an even greater level of immersion in the game, we make sure that the story developments move forward in a fairly speedy manner and with the right pace, essentially, rather than feeling slow and drawn out. Okay, yeah. Once again, that would depend on how the player approaches the game. If you're going to play it straight through, it's fine. It's just fine. But if you're going to take a break from the story and do mini games and Chadley challenges, you're going to get burned out on one thing or another. And then that's when you're going to say that there's pacing issues. I do not notice things like pacing when I watch TV or movies or play video games. I just try to follow with the story. If I do, cool. If I don't, then maybe that's a writing issue. I wouldn't call that pacing, or maybe I just have a different idea of what pacing actually is. I think that may have been misconstrued by people. They have said that, okay, that means they're going to cut down on the volume and they're going to remove story content. It's going to be a shorter game and they're going to cut it down. And that's not what I'm saying at all. It's about making sure the pacing feels right. He just has to keep emphasizing that. It's not about cutting out content. It's making sure that it feels right. The speed that the story progresses, it feels right. And it's fairly quick and feels like you can get through it at a reasonable pace, but it has to feel right. So that's what I mainly intended to say there. I guess that's why they dropped the quick progression in the in Remake. Like, there's a feature now where you can just blast through it. Everybody's at level 40. All your equipment is more or less maxed out, and you can just boom, you can just blitz it. Hamaguchi says that you really can look forward to the climax of the Remake series, and it'll be exactly what you want it to be. He says it's coming, and it's just as good as you think it is. Okay. Gotta have one. Oh, did I miss something? One final message. Two final things from me. First of all, we're working really hard on the third game in the Remake series at the moment. It's coming along really well. I've got in my head the vision now, the gameplay structure, the gameplay experience, the core experience, and it's looking in a really good state. It's something really satisfying that gamers can get their teeth into. And it'll be just a brilliant experience that it really should be and has to be good. See, that's the kind of thing I want to hear from game developers. Like, they're so confident that they're going to make something that everybody's going to love and they're going to play over and over and over again for years to come. So we're going to work on that, brush that up even further, and then deliver it in the not too distant future. You really can look forward to that climax of the series, and it'll be exactly what you want it to be. So don't worry about that. I was never really worried about that. It's coming, and it's just as good as you think it is. I'm very confident in the game that I'm making here. Good. Some Clear Obscure references here. Clear Obscure, Expedition 33. I hear a lot of great things about that game, but I don't know. It's got turn-based, which isn't bad. I don't have a problem with turn-based. Ever Crisis is somewhat turn-based, but with Expedition 33, they have the player being active with parries and other stuff, even though it is turn-based. It's kind of like how the Mario RPG, you've got timed blocks and timed extra attacks. It's kind of like that, but a lot more advanced, obviously. It adopted an active time battle system where players are still dodging and parrying between turns. Hamaguchi remembers doing that quite a while ago with Lightning Returns in Final Fantasy XIII Part 2. He still gets a lot of response from fans who really like them. I'm curious about Final Fantasy XIII. It looks great. It looks awesome, but it's crazy linear. From what I've read about it, it's crazy linear. There's like little to no exploration. And the story is stupid complicated. Like, stupid complicated. Anyway, many modern turn-based RPGs, most notably Clear Obscure, Expedition 33 this year, have adopted an ATB-style system where players are still dodging and parrying between turns. As the director of the Final Fantasy 13 series, I wondered if you noticed that and how you think that series will be received today. Yes, I worked on all the Final Fantasy 13 games. I think they were really well done, and I get a lot of response from fans who really like them. There's a really big fan community out there who are really passionate about those games still. If I could play it on PS5, I might look into it. Because I'm not going to go back and buy, what was it? I think it was PS3 era. I'm not going to go back and buy a PS3 for that. Unless I can get it for under $200. Doubt it. But, of course, Clear Obscure Expedition 33 came out this year, and there's been a lot of love from fans and the media for that game. But I do remember exactly like you said in your question. I felt similarly when I saw that. Okay, that's what they've done with their game, and I remember doing that quite a while ago with Lightning Returns. It does seem to use a similar kind of system to what we did. Talking about Clear Obscure, though, I think it's very easy for people to focus too much maybe on that mechanic side of it. Obviously, it's a very big story in the gaming industry this year, so it's a very obvious thing to point to. Yeah. It's followed the JRPG tradition. It's a turn-based, but it adds all these kinds of more action-style mechanics, like you've got the pinpoint timing guard, and you've got the parry. Yeah. It's clearly part of what makes it a good game, but I don't think people should be focusing on that too much. I think the reason why it's such a good game and why it's done so well and been so well regarded is that overall it has a really great balance of all the other aspects to it as well. It's got a really great story, the culture behind it. It's very much steeped in French history and culture, and they've got that aspect to it, which makes it feel unique in its own right. It's got Charlie Cox, right? I think Charlie Cox has a part in it. Not really well versed in French history and culture. That's probably why I'm not super interested in it. But as a video game, it's got my attention. I hear nothing but great things about it, and I would like to touch it. I would like to touch it just a little bit, but I would have to buy it because I don't think there's a demo. They've done that very well. The subject of the story as well may be similar in some ways to what modern drama series do and reveal things slowly. But the idea is that you've got this mystery, and as the story progresses, you can learn more about the world and what this mystery really means. I think that's really easy to understand. It's really catchy for people who like that kind of modern storytelling style. So from what I'm getting from that is, in part 3, he's going to bring the story along slowly. And it could feel like a longer game, but that's fine. That's fine. As long as it's not like Final Fantasy 16, where it was just really slow. It was a really slow crawl to the point where it got boring at times, and the side quests were really boring. But I wasn't really paying much attention to how boring the side quests were because I was just in it for the rewards. So part 3 could very much be a slow crawl to the finish line, and that's fine as long as the action is there. And the action will definitely be there. You definitely have to plug in Zack at some point. Sid and Vincent, no brainer. I don't know why people are worried about Sid and Vincent being playable. Of course they're going to be playable. The real question they should have is, Zack will be playable, but how often are we going to get to use him? That's what a lot of people aren't really asking. It can't feel forced. It just has to flow just right. And that's what I hope Hamaguchi gets right on that. Hamaguchi says he can't tell you when the third game is coming out. Duh. But it's going well. He says as soon as this panel finishes, he's getting off stage, running straight back to his hotel, and getting straight back to checking some of the levels of the game they've already created. So the guy just stays busy. You have to feel good about whatever it is you're waiting for when the guys working on it are always diligently working on it. I don't see how anybody could feel any kind of pessimism towards that. At MCM Comic Con London, Hamaguchi said he wanted to clear something up. At the meet and greet outside, someone said, "I've heard this rumor that the development on the third game is being canceled." What? Hamaguchi said that's absolutely not happening. It's going ahead. Why would anybody, like, why do people put stuff out there like that? I heard it's canceled. Well, who told you that? Yeah. You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies? Aw. Cute, naive Aerith. Just to stir things up. Like, don't do that. Hamaguchi says that the biggest hurdle when working on the remake series is that an original version they have to work with or from. When working on this whole project, the first 2 games and the same for the third is to make sure that they don't lose that perspective as a fan of the OG. But at the same time, they have to work out how much can and should they change, and how much they do keep exactly the same as the OG, and drawing that line and making those distinctions and cutting that is a difficult challenge. They have to think about that each time. I saw a comment about that in a YouTube video just last night, where they think that all the locations in the OG are going to make it into the third game, like Bone Village, the underwater reactor, all that stuff. And I chime in. I haven't checked to see if I got a response for this comment yet, but in so many words, I say they're going to end up cutting like 2 or 3 of those locations because they aren't really that important. They might keep the underwater reactor just because it's a reactor, but when it comes to Bone Village, I can't remember any significance to that location in the original. But when it comes to Rocket Town, you got to get Rocket Town because Sid is involved. That's his hometown. Medeal is where the weapons emerge, and Cloud and Tifa fall into the life stream, and that's going to be huge, so that has to stay in. The return to Midgar, of course, that's action. That's just a pure action set piece that they could keep in, and I believe they will keep it in. So as a series with so many fans out there, and obviously fans are different, so there's some people who, if they change too much, they won't like that, and others, if they don't change it enough, they may not like that either. So it really is a fine balance they have to tread. Now, I personally want to see stuff that I remember but told a little differently. Changing too much depends on what they change. If they change little stuff that doesn't really matter, that's not really here or there, nobody's going to care. People who nitpick on that sort of thing are just nitpicky for the sake of nitpicky. If people don't change it enough. Again, that depends on what they change and if it was really important to begin with. But they're trying to be positive and proactive and try to make the version of the game they think will appeal to and please as many people as possible. It's always a difficult line to draw, though. That just goes back to what I've been saying. Just stick to your plan and stop trying to make everybody happy. No matter what you do, you're going to rub some people the wrong way. So I wouldn't stress trying to strike a balance. Just do your plan. Oh, subtext. What's up, guy? Seeing a lot of upset retweets saying people must play the OG first. I disagree. I know people who got into FF7 through Remake and Rebirth. Some have gone back to the OG, but it hasn't impacted their enjoyment of it either. Final Fantasy has a purity gatekeeping issue. Let people do their thing. I agree. I agree to an extent. Being an MCU fan, I strongly believe that there has to be a foundation of knowledge if you're going to push forward following a franchise. You wouldn't watch all 4 Avengers movies back to back to back to back because things are happening in between those movies. If you watch Avengers 1 and then go straight to Age of Ultron, you're going to wonder, well, where the hell did Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver come from? Like, it's not going to make narrative sense. You're going to have to go back and see, what happened that led to whatever event, If you watch Infinity War first, and then you go back and you watch Civil War, it's not going to make narrative sense. There has to be stuff in between. Final Fantasy VII isn't any different. If you go from if you skip the OG and go straight to Remake, there's a lot of stuff in Remake that's still going to be there. But there's things in the OG that offer perspective to the Remake series. Like, for example, how does Aerith know that Cloud is a merc? He never told her. How does Aerith know that Tifa's going to ask her to get Marlene out of the bar? To know that, you would have to play the OG because, spoiler alert, she dies. She's in the live stream, and she's using memories to travel these worlds in the Remake trilogy. She's operating with memories of the deceased while keeping her original form. And she just knows this stuff now. If you just jump into this stuff, there's a mystery there, but the Remake trilogy isn't gonna answer your questions. It's not, because it's mainly designed for people who already have a knowledge of the original game. It's not a remake in the traditional sense, and we should all know that by now. As far as graphics are concerned, I mean, you can play modded versions of the PC version that look better, but from, getting from A to B, it's going to feel like, whoa, this is going too fast. Like, for example, in Remake, from Wall Market all the way to Platefall in the OG, that's like, wow, that's probably 30 minutes tops, providing, skill level, how strong your characters are at the moment. You're walking through the train graveyard, and maybe you get into some random encounters. You might even fight Eligor, because Eligor's not a boss in that game. He's just a random encounter. Depending on how fast you get through all these screens, you could get from Wall Market to Platefall in the OG in like under 30 minutes, and it's going to feel like, wow. In remake, it's a few hours. From Wall Market to Platefall, from chapters 9 to 12, that's probably a good 4 or 5 hours, maybe even 6. So if you want a more complete experience first, for your first FF7 experience, if you're new, do Remake first. Do remake and Rebirth first if you want something more complete, something more cinematic. If you go back to FF7, it's going to feel very fast. It's going to feel very primitive. So yeah, I do agree with subtext to a degree. But to say that you must play the OG first, probably not. Probably not. I mean, of course I did, but we're talking about when I was 14. That's like, I was 14 years old at the time. And I went into Remake with a knowledge already. But those of y'all who don't have a knowledge of the franchise already, I would at least take a crash course in the original compilation. Maybe not necessarily play the OG, which I do recommend, but at least take a crash course into what you're getting into. Because Remake is not going to answer all of your questions. Hell, playing the OG first won't even answer all your questions, because the trilogy is going in a whole new direction. It's when you compare the two, it's the same, but it's very different, and you won't really notice how glaringly different it is until those final 2 hours of Remake and Rebirth. But yeah, subtext as always. Yeah, good stuff. Hamaguchi says he would like people to play Remake first if they haven't played the OG yet. So either way is fine. You'll enjoy the game and have a similar experience whether you've played the original or not. Whether or not you'll have a similar experience depends on your preferred style of gameplay, turn-based or action. That would depend. How cinematic you like your video games, I think that would impact it. Revi says the original is superior in every way. The only good thing about the remake is the combat and occasionally visuals. Other than that, it's absolutely plastic, bloated, and soulless. I categorically disagree with that. That is what interneters call clickbait, rage bait even. Yeah, I totally, categorically, unequivocally disagree with that. The OG holds a special place in all of our hearts. No question about it. But there's nothing you can do with the original game, even with mods. There's nothing you can do to the original to make it better than the remake series. You can't. It's better. The trilogy is better in every way. I'm probably going to catch a lot of heat from anybody who even cares to click on this video and sit through it up to this point, but I played the OG. I know the OG. The remake trilogy is a step in the right direction. The combat is better. Story's better. Graphics, no brainer. The music, it's the trilogy is a better experience, hands down. But if you need perspective and context, not necessarily answers, but perspective and context, you need the OG. You need it. If Final Fantasy VII was a college course, you need the OG. That's required playing. The OG and Crisis Core are required. They should be required. For context behind what Remake is based on. Not necessarily about. OG and the Remake trilogy are about two different things. They're about two completely different things. If you prefer the OG, you're allowed to prefer the OG over the trilogy. You're allowed to. Don't get it twisted. Don't get my opinions twisted. You're definitely allowed to prefer the OG over the trilogy. It's just to say that the trilogy is plastic and soulless it's rage bait. It's just comment bait. It's pure bait. Ben Starr. I love me some Ben Starr. He's a cool guy, man. I've watched a lot of Ben Starr interviews. He's a cool dude, man. Ben Starr asked VGC to ask Hamaguchi if he can voice a golden chocobo in Remake Part 3. I'll ask the team if they want to do that. I've got the impression that he's kind of the guy at every event you go to. He's there, so I'm going to have to... excuse me. I'm going to have to see him at London Comic Con this weekend because I'd imagine he'd probably be there as well. Look forward to seeing him. That'd be crazy. That'd be kind of crazy. You go through the process of getting a gold chocobo, which probably won't be the same as the original game. It'll be a process, but not nearly as long and arduous. But you get him, and he talks. It's Clive Rossfield as a chocobo. It'd be crazy. Hamaguchi says the Nintendo game that has influenced FF... What is my mouse doing? Hamaguchi says that the Nintendo game that influenced the FF7 Remake trilogy the most is Breath of the Wild. But if you talk about other Nintendo games that have influenced me, I've taken a lot from, you might think it's a bit of a cop-out, but then it'll be Breath of the Wild, such an inspirational game, and I've learned so much from that, looking at how it's affected the remake series moving forward from Remake to Rebirth. And yeah, I haven't really seen Breath of the Wild. I'm not really a Zelda guy. It was one of the first action RPGs, but I'm not really a Zelda guy like that. It's got a pretty strong fan base, though. I do know that. Hamaguchi says he's looking forward on a new game with the same 7 Remake team in the future. He says it could be a Final Fantasy or something completely different. Oh. One big thing I'm looking forward to in the future is having the team I've put together work on something new. One thing that's common in the industry is that when a project is finished, the team is split and move around. But that hasn't happened here. We've basically got the same guys all the way from the beginning of the project right through to the end. So I'm really looking forward to the game that we look to create after. It could be a Final Fantasy. It could be something completely different. I haven't decided yet. But whatever it is, gamers who have paid attention and seen what we've done with the Remake trilogy, they'll have great expectations and we'll look forward to seeing what the team come up with. I mean, I hope he's just being vague and they do another Final Fantasy VII. Hamaguchi says Part 3 is coming along really well. He's very confident and says it'll be exactly what fans really want it to be. First of all, we're working really hard on the third game. It's coming along really well. I've got in my head the vision now, the gameplay structure, the experience, the core experience, and it's looking in a really good state. I read that the story is finished. The scenario's finished. One of those. I know the story and the scenario aren't necessarily the same thing, but I read that those are done. One or both of those is finished. And I hear tactics is really good. I don't really have a vested interest at it at the moment, but I hear it's good. I heard something recently about DLC. I'm just scrolling to see if there's anything about that. Guess I'll have to Google it. This is from Nintendo reporters. 7 Remake Part 3 DLC is on the table, and Square Enix isn't ruling out. Square Enix just sketched a clearer picture of what happens after Remake Part 3 lands. The director, Naoki Hamaguchi, confirmed that the team once explored Rebirth DLC, but shelved it to prioritize shipping the trilogy's finale. Yeah, I knew that. Here's the twist. Once the third entry ships, DLC for that game is actively under consideration, and the door isn't closed on something larger if momentum keeps building. In plain terms, the finale aims to be a proper send-off, and if the audience broadens the way the team expects, add-ons or even another installment could follow. Ooh, I'm not going to get too happy, but we unpack what up in the air really means, how a post-launch expansion could fit the story and systems, why platforms and reach matter more than ever, and which signals to track as development rolls along. You'll find realistic scenarios for DLC structures, sensible speculation on scope, chapters, side stories, challenge modes, and a practical checklist for keeping expectations grounded. Yeah. Hope is healthy, hype is optional. Clarity helps you plan what to play next. When a series reaches finale, you usually expect a clean goodbye. Square Enix is nudging us to imagine a wider landing zone. The message is simple: finish strong, then decide what to grow. The team previously floated extra content for Rebirth and changed course. Yeah. That matters because it shows priority. Ship the capstone, then expand right after release. DLC for the third party entries on the table. And if the audience snowballs, a new project tied to this isn't off limits. If you're trying to plan your playtime or coverage, this changes how you think about the last game. It might be the last main chapter, yet still the start of a second wind. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. The Part 3 sets up for other stuff, new stuff. Like how Secret Wars 2015 set up for all different Marvel. It was a completely different landscape after that. The subtle shift from a closed book to a book with an appendix frames the coming month in a more flexible way. Where FF7 Remake Part 3 stands and what already playable really implies. Hearing that much of the finale already playable suggests that the foundations are in place. Core systems, major sequences, and key progression loops feel solid enough to test. Playable isn't code for done, though. I imagine so, yeah. It typically means designers in QA can run through milestone builds, stress major boss beats, and tune encounter pacing, while writers and audio refine connective tissue. It confirms we're past blue sky planning and deep into shaping and polish, an arc where the team trims blow, locks camera timing, and tightens synergy skills so they land with punch. It also implies that post-launch ideas can be scoped in parallel without derailing base game stability. In other words, the train is moving, and there's room in the last cars for future additions once the ride reaches the station. The real takeaway on DLC: what was shelved, what's possible. Genuine talks about extra chapters for Rebirth. Those talks gave way to a cleaner mandate: ship the finale first. Maybe implying that the DLC could be flashbacks, stuff that happened in Rebirth between the lines, so to speak. Post-launch, calculus flips with a complete trilogy in players' hands, and an add-on can be laser-targeted, a compact narrative slice that stitches to the finale's theme, a combat gauntlet that leans on mastered builds, or a side character spotlight that didn't fit the main cadence. I would like a Vincent DLC that's really just a remake of Dirge of Cerberus, because I never played the original Dirge. I hear nothing but bad things about it. Bad, if not mediocre. It looks fun. The way Vincent plays, he just looks fun. So if they did a DLC based on him, that'd be cool. Like say he goes off as say at some point in part 3, he and Sid go off on their own, or maybe he and Yuffie go off on their own, and we don't see them. We don't see them for a while. We reunite with them later, but then the DLC can be what Vincent and whoever he was with were doing at the time, and that'd be dope. But it'd be even cooler if it tied into events that took place later. Think in terms of sufficiency and of novelty. Sufficiency means the finale stands on its own. Novelty means the DLC sharpens the thread without feeling like cut leftovers. Yeah. That kind of sounds like what I was just saying. Make it mean something. The most sensible candidates are areas that benefit from room to breathe, a villain-centric interlude, an epilogue zone with bespoke rules, or a what-if challenge path that toys with synergy quirks. The team's openness signals that scope would scale with appetite. Nothing flashy for its own sake. Just add something that earns a place on the shelf to the next main game. Something that means something, yeah. What a fourth installment could be and what likely isn't. Hearing maybe even another installment can set imaginations on fire, but context keeps us grounded. First, the studio calls the third entry the finale. That means any future project would stand adjacent, a self-contained chapter, a character-focused experience, a modular experiment that doesn't unspool the trilogy's conclusion. Don't expect a secret part 4 that rewrites the ending. No, don't do that. Do not do that, please. Do not do that, please. Make it its own thing. Make it its own thing that builds on what we just played. Like Secret Wars, Battle World. I should say Battle World wasn't an extension of Secret Wars. It was the product of Secret Wars. Just like Secret Wars was the product of Time Runs Out. They play off each other, but it's new. More plausible, a lean, replay-friendly title riffing on a single theme, or an anthology-style experience that revisits a pocket of the world through a sharper lens. Okay, yeah. Another option is a systems-driven offshoot, a roguelike challenge mode with narrative framing, or a tactical spin layered atop familiar assets. The shared thread is respect for closure. Build forward without reopening the same arc. The studio's own phrasing, up in the air, reads like healthy optionality, not a coded announcement. Because I read that as a coded announcement, but just reading that makes me think, okay, like they're really considering doing it. The team expects the trilogy's completion to broaden the audience. The expectation sits at the heart of the DLC talk. Once a full arc is available across more systems, new players who waited for the complete experience jump in and return feeling confident recommending the saga to friends. A bigger base changes what's viable. Post-launch content can just justify cost because there are simply more people to play it. Yeah, it's numbers. It's just numbers. Story scope after the finale. Dude, how long is this? It's pretty long. It's pretty long, but I want to touch on this because they've got my interest. Story scope after the finale. Good DLC respects the end while enriching the edges. Picture a combat narrative that takes place alongside late game events that doesn't fracture the outcome. Like it's got a lot to do with what we've played, but it's not changing anything. An epilogue that focuses on the aftermath, yeah. Quiet conversations, smaller stakes, room for character beats that a finale sprint can't linger on. Another smart lane is thematic contrast, switch perspective, change traversal rules, or showcase an antagonist toolkit. See, I like that. I like that. Just stuff that's happening behind the scenes with characters that aren't currently on screen. I like stuff like that. On the Way to a Smile. I like On the Way to a Smile because we're following side characters, and while what they're doing isn't really important or interesting or intriguing, we're keeping tabs on them. We're just following them around, and they're having conversations. They're having interactions with other side characters. They're getting into their own things that don't have big stakes. Kind of a just a small tie-in comic. You got to have tie-ins. You want to know what's going on with all the characters at the moment. The remake project thrives when it blends familiar iconography with modern framing. A post-launch chapter could channel that trick one more time. The aim isn't to fix the main ending. No, 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 no. Don't do nothing that screws with the ending. I'm sure the ending will be fine. I mentioned in a previous video, I want something final. I want something definitive that doesn't pander to any one group of people, but then don't go and put something out that alters the ending. It's to let a curious player lean in one more time, hear a different motif, and come away feeling like the world still hums after the curtain falls. Yes. Keep the door open for more FF7. That's just what I get from that. How DLC could fit structurally without breaking the finale. Structure matters as much as story. A self-contained chapter that unlocks from the main menu keeps saves tidy and avoids timeline headaches. True. Think 2 to 4 hours of bespoke arena or region and a handful of fresh enemy patterns that reward mastery of synergy skills. Layer in a hard mode or score attack variant and you've got legs. Yeah, keep it interesting. Keep it interesting and keep it fun. Hard mode is always fun when it's fair, because sometimes you got enemies who don't do shit fair and you have to resort to cheat tactics. Because if the enemy's going to be cheap, I'm going to be cheap. If the team opts for a combat first pack, a tower or gauntlet with handcrafted modifiers pushes advanced builds in a satisfying way. That's cool. That sounds cool. Especially if leaderboards or time attack medals offer bragging rights. For a narrative first pack, consider limited party compositions and a curated set of upgrades to focus decision making. I would go with the latter. I want story. I want story with very challenging battle stuff. The golden rule, add depth without diffusion. 100% agree. Gameplay and systems, evolution without breaking what works. Across Remake and Rebirth, the combat pivoted to a hybrid action ATB rhythm that rewards planning and aggression in equal measure. The finale's job is not to reinvent the wheel, it's to sand the edges. That's a good analogy. And I think they're doing that. They're not going to remake the battle system. They're just going to add to it like they did in Rebirth. There's definitely going to be some assists, maybe tag-ins, the kind of stuff that I wanted in Rebirth but wasn't there, and for a good reason. If you put too much cool stuff in one game in a series, you're not going to have any cool stuff left over for the next game. So the only way that Part 3 isn't going to be better than Part 2 is if Part 3 doesn't have anything that they can add. That can mean clearer readability in multi-phase bosses, tighter camera behavior in crowded areas, and synergy skills that feel distinct rather than interchangeable. Post-launch, a DLC can safely push the envelope. Experimental status interactions, enemy types that hard counter common habits, or a mode that invents expectations by forcing slow, deliberate play. Change the way you approach the game. Remake's hard mode didn't really do that. It's fun, but all it did for me was make me use magic more. And that's not enough. That's not a drastic change in strategy. I think Part 3 is going to do that. I think Part 3 will do that, but a DLC could do it even more. It could really push it. Variety is the spice here. Surprise without confusion. Friction without frustration. You want players to excel after the finale, then lean forward again when the optional challenge arrives. Agree. Difficulty, mastery, and why in-game add-ons shine. In-game systems sing when mastery meets novelty. A DLC can assume you've cleared the main campaign, so it doesn't need to reteach basics. Yeah. Unless they're going to add stuff like the Yuffie DLC, they had you learning a different synergy system. It wasn't the same synergy system in Rebirth. It was just hit L2 and link Yuffie and Sonon together. So it was new stuff, but then in Rebirth they redid what synergy is. That frees designers to build encounters around advanced behaviors, cancel windows, precise stagger manipulation, or buff and debuff chains that punish sloppy rotations. Throw in a handful of high-impact accessories or abilities that reframe builds, and veterans get that one more lap feeling. Accessibility isn't ignored. A story mode with generous assists keeps the door open, but the beating heart is a clean skill exam that makes your in-game loadouts feel earned. Yes, that's why I don't have a problem using cheap tactics when it comes to the brutal Chadley challenges and Rebirth, because I put in the time to get all the things I needed for those cheap strategies. If I have to resort to cheap tactics because the enemies are resorting to cheap tactics, I'll use them, because I put in the time to get everything I needed for those builds. Release rhythm and signals to watch before Square Enix speaks again. Cautious optimism beats calendar speculation. Instead of guessing a date, watch for concrete signals, backstage date, interviews mentioning balance passes, ratings board activity tied to demo content, soundtrack registrations that hint at new tracks, and social clips that showcase late game enemy families without context spoilers. Yeah, I really can't wait for new music, because those boss encounters are everything, dude. If a DLC plan firms up, expect language that emphasizes optionality and celebration, words that honor closure rather than promise missing chapters. Marketing will likely lean on clarity over mystery, using shorter windows between reveal and launch to catch players still buzzing from the finale. How communication could frame the add-on if it happens. Expect an invitational tone. Thanks for seeing this journey through. Here's an encore built for you. The pitch would anchor in player mastery and fan affection. Trailers would be tight, a motif twist, a villain smile, a splash of new mechanics, and a date. Pricing would reflect scope. A smart move is bundling a challenge mode with a narrative vignette, so players find a hook. If the team greenlights a standalone project later, framing would shift to identity, title, thesis, and how it respects the trilogy without depending on it. I'm sure I'll get it regardless. They don't really need to do anything specific for me to get on board. I'm already on board. I've been on this hype train since 2019. Even though the original the tech demo was in 2005. I wasn't even really on video games in 2005, but then 10 years later, they dropped the original Promise Has Been Made trailer. I didn't even see that. I wasn't there for that, but everybody went nuts for it. 4 years later was when I got wind of Remake. That's when I finally knew what it was. So I've been on this shit ever since. They don't really have to do anything particular for me to be on board for a DLC. I'm already going to get it. And anybody who loves this right now is going to get it too. Community expectations versus studio priorities. Fans crave closure and extras in equal measure. Studios crave focus and sustainability. The good news is those desires can align. Finishing part 3 first keeps the promise. Considering DLC later keeps the spark. Where things wobble is when expectations inflate. The studio's phrasing leaves room to breathe on purpose. It sets a boundary. No promises before the finale ships, and an opening. Options evaluated after players finish the journey. For everyone watching, the healthiest stance is to celebrate the arc we have and treat any add-on as a bonus track. Yeah. That mindset shields you from disappointment and lets the team say yes to good ideas without feeling boxed in. Yes. Yes. The finale should feel like a finale. And then the DLC should feel like DLC without taking anything away from the finale. It should add to the finale without changing it. Practical takeaways we can act on now. First, plan to wrap the trilogy before you plan around extras. Second, keep an eye on official interviews. Quotes carry more weight than algorithm-friendly rumor mills. Third, if you're the type who loves in-game challenges, maintain your late-game saves and a list of builds you enjoy. If DLC arrives, you'll jump straight in. Fourth, manage social spoilers by muting keywords in the weeks after launch. Finally, make room for curiosity without treating hope as a pre-order. Your backlog and your wallet will thank you. Yes, absolutely. What Up in the Air really signals about priorities after Part 3. Calling plans up in the air isn't indecision, it's a posture. It tells you that the team will make calls after the dust settles with real player data and clearer headspace. That's healthy. It means resources remain flexible, creative energy can be channeled towards the best idea, and nothing is forced to exist because of an old slide deck. For players, it translates to a cleaner promise. The finale comes first, and anything else must earn its spot by adding joy rather than noise. Facts. If you've ever finished a great book and found a brilliant short story in the back, you know the feeling they're aiming for. How a wider audience could tip the scales. I think we know that. That's why they're porting to Nintendo and Xbox. Setting expectations, celebrate the finish, stay open to the encore. The safest, happiest place is to land is simple. Cheer for the finale that feels complete. Yes. If extra chapters arrive, treat them as a gift, not a patch. If a separate project appears down the line, judge it on its own merits rather than a secret fourth act. This approach lets you enjoy the end without bargaining for more, and paradoxically, it makes any encore feel all the sweeter. After years of waiting and 2 big steps forward, that's a pretty great way to cross the finish line. Conclusion. Square just set the tone for life after the finale. Finish the story right, then consider smart ways to let the world linger. DLC for Part 3 is a live option, sized to suit a larger audience once the trilogy stands complete. A further project isn't promised, but it isn't off the board either. Hope can stretch its legs. Expectations should keep their shoes on. Keep your saves ready, your eyes on official interviews, and your excitement measured. If an encore comes, you'll be first in line. No scrambling, no second guessing, just one more song in a world you love. Shit. That was a lot. Really good insight, really good information, way to temper expectations. They're saying, don't get your hopes up, but keep hope alive. I like that. That's a good message.